I remember sitting in the studio at 2 a.m. It was at my house. My family's asleep. And I was listening to this thing. And about halfway through this song, I had these tears in my eyes. And I felt like there was something magical happening. That happens to me every once in a while where I'm a part of something artistically where I get kind of overwhelmed emotionally and feel like I'm really on to something that's important. Not that I think it's like great or better than anything else or that it's going to be something giant or big. It's because I feel like it touches on something that's important to me, and it like grabbed a hold of like a nerve, and it's just gripping it, and I could feel it, and it's like electric waves through your body. It doesn't happen on every single thing, but it happens every so often, and you kind of go, wow, this is what I was meant to do, was this one little thing, you know?
Welcome everyone to the 6th episode of Catch My Riff. My name is Devin Canfield and I am your host. Today's episode begins with an excerpt from Tom DeLonge's Pursuit of Tone documentary, which was created by Ernie Ball. You can find that video on YouTube or Ernie Ball's website. Ernie Ball has been a leader in guitar string manufacturing for years, and they also offer guitarists a wide variety of guitar accessories as well. To stay up to date with all of our episodes, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Right now, we are currently working to get all of our videos up to date on YouTube. In the meantime, you can find us on Instagram at Catch My Riff Podcast. And if you have any suggestions with ways we can improve our show, be sure to shoot us a message or leave us a comment on one of our posts. Kevin Trout is today's guest, and he is a San Diego-based videographer, photographer, music fanatic, and he is also a brand and marketing content creator. I discovered Kevin's work through his affiliation with Angels and Airwaves, Tom DeLonge's band, and as Angels and Airwaves releases and records their new record, Kevin has been an integral part in creating some of their media content. Kevin Trout also had a major role in creating the Coney 2012 documentary, and I'm excited for you all to hear his journey and how this all started and came to be and what led him to these endeavors. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sam, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and all the way out from, and are you in San Diego?
Yeah, San Diego.
I'm kind of jealous, I'm not going to lie.
Well, the weather's been very bizarre. We hit probably like close to 110 on Sunday, which was just unbearable to be outside. Then we had fires starting, which sucked. And then Monday was like 80 degrees. And then yesterday on the way to work, it was sprinkling outside and it was like low mid 70s. I mean, it just like definitely took a turn. But yeah, I mean, I love it out here, dude. I've been all over the US and seen a lot of cities, but I don't think I would ever leave San Diego. I did live in LA for a couple of years, but I still consider Southern California as kind of one, I guess. I would never leave Southern California.
If someone's out on the East Coast and they've never been out there, I've been blessed enough I've been in San Diego. What's the difference in a way? Like, is there a different type of feel and vibe from LA to San Diego? Because when I was in San Diego, dude, it was mid-June. And I remember I had driven from Big Sur. I camped in Big Sur, left pretty early in the morning, drove, the Highway 1, which was just something out of a movie, literally like out of like a fairy tale. From being on the East Coast and seeing that for the first time was pretty profound. But San Diego seemed very chill, was very quiet, kind of wasn't a lot of madness going on. There a big difference from LA to San Diego, you feel?
I mean, I think the way you're describing it is 100% accurate. San Diego, for the most part, San Diego and LA are like identical when it comes to like climate and things to do. It's just the people are different, and people in San Diego are just way more laid back. It's not so aggressive when it comes to like, especially, the profession that I'm in. I lived up in LA from 2006. I lived up there for 2 years, and it's just like everybody is just trying to figure out how you can help them out. I mean, if you meet somebody and you cannot help that person move up in the chain, they want nothing to do with you, man. Like, it's just really weird. I feel like none of the friendships are really real. It's just super fast paced. It's always about, how to get on top. It's just really aggressive, and I'm not that type of person. I like routine. I like just people that like working together and not, trying to overstep boundaries and stuff. So San Diego is just way more laid back. However, the con to that is there's not a ton of work in San Diego. It's definitely a lot harder, and you end up finding a lot of jobs where you have to go up to LA and shoot. But again, that's just how it is, man. It's just way more fast paced up there, and everyone's just after something. And here it's still the same. People are still, trying to be good at what they do, but it's definitely not like a backstabbing type of environment down here. And so I did it for a couple of years, man. I'm like, this is just not, I miss home. I was already going back to San Diego every weekend anyways. I'm like, I miss it down there. So if I can work in San Diego, I'm going to stay in San Diego. And so that's what I've been able to do.
So I'm assuming San Diego is where you're from.
Yeah, born and raised in San Diego, man. I love it here. Yeah.
Now, like, when you're talking about these type of situations in LA, is that from experience, or you just kind of notice it?
Totally, both. I mean, when I was up there, again, I'm definitely a more laid back person. I don't love, going out every night. But that's just kind of what it is up there. I mean, you have to go out and network if you want to meet people. And look, man, I get it. Like, who is like how you're going to make it. It's about connections, man. I mean, that's how I've been able to do what I'm doing for so long. And that's, I've met some great people along the way. None of those people, I don't think there's one person in my like story of how I started till how I got here. I don't think LA had anything to do with that. Everyone I met, even the job that I got in LA, was because I knew somebody that I'd met while I was on the road, the years before that. And I don't know. I just, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty amazing, man. I said it as we started this, but I'm really excited to kind of see what we can get into, and appreciate taking this time. And for listeners, how I came upon Kevin and his profession, and we'll let you kind of dive into this, is I would say that in the world of worlds, in my personal life, there is Jesus Christ, and then there is Tom DeLonge and Blink-182 and Angels and Airwaves, more so Angels and Airwaves. And I found Kevin through his work with Angels and Airwaves, and here we are. So the one thing I do want to ask is, you talk about, we'll dive into like your journey, but when you say it's about who you know, how much of it as well is being prepared so that when you run into that person, you know what I mean, that you have something to present? Like, what's the middle ground between preparation and your personal work, and then allowing things to kind of fall into place naturally?
Yeah, it's always good to be prepared. I do believe there are situations that you can bullshit and get your way and, get pretty far. Not to kind of jump around my timeline, but my first connection or in to kind of like the Tom world was like back in like 2007 or something. I had randomly just gotten an interview because my boss was like, hey, Macbeth is, was Tom's shoe company back in the day. They need some help editing some video. Why don't you go down there and interview with this person? I'm like, all right. So I go down there really nervous because this was like really early in my career. And I'm sitting there talking to this person, showing him some of my stuff, and this guy walks by, and he's like, "I know you," and I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I've been on Warped Tour before. You look familiar." And he's like, "Oh, dude, this guy's awesome. Whatever he wants, like, let's just have him do it. Like, this guy's super cool." And that was kind of the end of it. Like, the interview kind of just was like, went out the door, and just because I knew this guy, well, I didn't even really know him, just because he had known me, that I'd been around the scene before, and you know, maybe we talked a couple times randomly. He's like, "Yeah, this guy's cool, man. Let's bring him on," and that was it. So it almost, all this preparation that I had, you know, getting my best work together, making this real. Although I was prepared, it all kind of went out the window just because of, I happened to know this guy that walked by during my interview, and from there, you know, I ended up doing stuff with them for a long time. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit of both, man. It just kind of depends on, I think it's more about being at the right place at the right time. I feel like that's probably been my luck so far.
Well, it seems like it's been working for one. And it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy because how you're talking about LA, I lived in Nashville for about a year, and that's how I felt there, honestly. Like, it was amazing. Awesome place, you
Yeah.
know? Like, I would go back and have an amazing time. But as a musician myself, I was just like, and I think it's more so my personality. Maybe I'm kind of like you, more laid back. Like, I get lost in, you know, the creative aspect of, and this is just myself, you know, like being alone on the beach writing as opposed to doing drugs and going out and shit like that. But I kind of felt that way in Nashville. So it must have been refreshing, I'm sure, for you to head back to San Diego, as you were
Yeah,
saying.
absolutely. It's the same thing, man.
So let's kind of dive in, if you don't mind. Tell us about going and getting your career started, even prior to, you had given me kind of some insight into your timeline, but when did you even start doing this? Like, were you even in high school, stuff like that, shooting film? And because now you see a lot more y- teenagers, things like that, diving into that world because they grew up with this technology. You know, a cell phone is like part of their DNA, part of their existence. Because I mean, for myself, being 27, there is a time, like my generation is the time where there was no such thing as a cell phone at one point. And then we're like, oh, these things are new. And, you know, now like my 15, 6, or excuse me, my 16-year-old sister, she wasn't in a place where she didn't not know what a cell phone was. And I think that's crazy. So when did you get started doing all this stuff? Was it as early as high school or?
So as far as high school goes, photography, videography, all that was never on my mind. I mean, um, I took one photography class as an elective, kind of just as one of those, like, this seems kind of easy classes to take. Didn't take it seriously. It's not like I was the best in the class or anything, but I mean, this was back when you were taking your pictures on film and developing your film and making prints in the classroom. And I don't know, man. I was just like, all right, this is just a class. Like, didn't think it was ever going to turn into anything. Didn't even really enjoy it that much. In high school, really, it was all about skateboarding and playing music. And I liked music a lot. You know, when I started high school, I'd still never been to a show. I was just getting introduced to music that wasn't on the radio, and that was really interesting for me. I think maybe the first band that I ever heard that was not like a mainstream band was Taking Back Sunday, and I was like, man, I like this kind of music. Like, what else is out there? And this person's like, oh, well, I like this other band too. And it was Thursday. And I'm like, dude, this is the kind of music I'm into. I like this a lot. And so then I started really getting into that type of music. And I think that's when I started wanting to play music too. I'm like, I want to play music like this. This just sounds fun to play. So I bought a bass guitar, just taught myself how to play. Didn't have a band. Randomly knew this girl that knew a kid that drummed at a different high school. She's like, you guys should, talk and, see if you guys could become friends and play. So I remember I'm like, okay, well, give him my phone number. And then about, 4 days later, this guy comes up my driveway and he still had my phone number Sharpied on the inside of his hand. And I'm like, oh, hey man, nice to meet you. Let's play some music. And yeah, dude, we just started jamming. He was wearing a Jimmy Eat World shirt. I'd never heard of Jimmy Eat World. He kept talking about Saves the Day. And so he really brought this music really into my life. And so we just started jamming, dude. And we were just super into that type of music. We started going to shows together. And we were really into like meeting the bands, dude, back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like, being the kid that like waited outside super early, just maybe the guy will walk out in the front or like walk to his, bus or van in the back. And so, there with my disposable camera, getting a picture of, Travis Barker, whoever else, man.
Adam was there or something.
Yeah, for sure, man. I remember, yeah. So I was super into that. And then I didn't know anything about the Warped Tour or anything. And my friend, the drummer, he was just like, hey, man, there's the Warped Tour. We should go check it out. It has all the bands that we're into are going to be playing in one spot. Let's go do it. And I'm like, all right, man, I bought my ticket. I took a disposable camera. And we went to the show, and I remember getting ready to watch Sum 41, and the singer was kind of just on the other side of the fence, and I saw him, and I went over there, and I yelled his name, and he came over, and I slipped my ticket through the chain link fence, had him sign it, and I took a picture of him like pulling the ticket and signing it, and I was just like, dude, this is awesome. This is the coolest thing ever, dude. I just freaking met this guy. He signed my ticket. Like, I was on a high, dude. And then just like right after that, walking around, I see Bert from The Used walking around, and I'm like, oh my God, like there's Bert. Let's go get him. Let's go get our picture with him. We go over there and we get our picture with Bert. And I'm just like, this tour is amazing, man. Like, look, bands just walk around like it's no big deal. They're super cool. They're taking the time to take your picture. I was on this huge high, man. And then kind of later in the day, it's in a parking lot, so it's super hot. I mean, all those shows are super hot, dude. We're sitting down, and there's this lady that's kind of in the distance, and I feel like I'm making eye contact with her. And she is walking towards us, and I'm telling my friend, I'm like, this lady is looking at me, and she's coming this way. She's going to say something to us for sure. So she approaches us, and again, we're sitting down. We're just like on this like red curb, and there's just everyone sitting down. And she comes up and like stands right in front of me, but she asked this group next to me, and it's these three girls, and she's like, hey, do you three girls want to come backstage? I need some volunteers to help us serve dinner to all the bands. And I jump up and I'm like, we'll do it. And she's like, no, like, I'd rather, it's better if girls do it, And I'm like, we really want to do it. I wasn't giving up. And of course they're jumping up and down too. Like, yes, we'll do it. She's like, okay, but I only need two of you. And then they're like, oh, well, we don't want to split up. And she's like, are you sure? Yeah, like whatever, it's fine, no big deal. Like we don't want to split up. And then she's just like, oh, fine, you two can do it. And so we're like, all right, cool. So we go backstage. She's like, here's the deal. They basically have a catering line. There's a catering company that's on the whole tour. And, you know, they serve the breakfast, lunch, and dinner to all these bands. It was the end of the day, so we were doing dinner, you know, put our gloves on, and I'm just sitting there like serving mashed potatoes to like Pennywise, Sum 41, The Used, and I'm like, this is crazy, man. Like,
you want gravy with that, bro?
Yeah. I'm like, this is freaking awesome. So we do that. I think it's like an hour or something. We're in an air conditioning room, so like I'm like, this is fine. This is cool, man. And then after that happens, she's like, okay, so, you know, thanks for all your help. Here's some backstage passes for you guys. Sorry it's the end of the day, but, you know, there's still a couple other bands that are playing. And we're like, well, what does this mean? Like, I'd never been backstage before. Like what, you know, what can I do? And they're like, just don't be an idiot, you know, just act normal and just don't be an idiot and everything will be fine.
And how old are you at this point?
This is 2003, so I was probably 19, maybe 20. All right, cool. So we kind of look at the list, like who's left, like, oh man, let's go check out Pennywise. Pennywise would be cool. So we go over to the main stage, and this is kind of like, they kind of like point people out that are standing there depending on like the band and how many people are already on stage. And we're kind of just standing down there because I'm like, do we go up there? Do we stay down here? Like, what do we do? And there wasn't really a lot of people there. And he's like, yeah, you two can come up here. And we're like, all right, cool. So we're standing behind the drummer, just like up against the back of the wall. And I got my disposable camera. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm looking out at San Diego right now. And like, near the end of the day, that's when everyone starts coming to the main stage because a lot of the smaller stages are closing down and stuff. So like, it's a massive amount of people right here. And so Pennywise is playing their set, and they get to the last song, and I start feeling like people pushing on me, and I'm like, what? And they're like, dude, this is the song where their friends come out and like jump around on stage and like sing and stuff. And I'm like, all right. So like I walk to the front of the stage, and I'm like, you know, me and my buddy are singing this song, and then the singer comes over, puts his arm around me, and we were both singing this song into the microphone. And I'm like, all right, dude, like, what do I got to do to do this again? They finished their set. We immediately run back to catering, and we're like, we want to do this tomorrow. Whatever you want us to do, we want to go to the show tomorrow and, you know, get a pass and do this again. She's like, all right, cool. You know, so we ended up doing, I don't know, like 10 shows. We just packed our stuff into a car and just followed the tour for like 10 days and did the same thing. Being on stage every day, seeing these bands, hanging out with them. We're like, this is the life, dude. This is the coolest thing ever. So after that run of shows, we go home. We just continue to do our day jobs, keeping in touch with these guys because they're always like, there are jobs that open on this tour, and we're like, whatever the job is, we want to do it. We want to be a part of this tour. Any job, we'll do the worst job on this tour. We just want to be a part of it. Kept in touch. No real leads or anything like that. But we're like, we're going to do this either way. Like, and we told them that, like, if you can't get us a job, we're just going to follow this thing and help you out. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. They didn't take us seriously whatsoever. And my buddy was like, he's like, dude, you should make a MySpace page. That's what's cool right now. MySpace. And we should look for people to stay with on the road so we're not sleeping at rest stops every night like we did the year before. Okay. So I create a page, throw some pictures on there. And what was crazy back then on MySpace, this is 2004, 2003, 2004, is that you could type in a zip code, and it would like pull people up that were in that zip code. And so I'd be like, all right, well, the first stop's, I think it was like Houston. Type in that, all these people show up, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna just basically message every single girl on the first like 10 pages. Tell them that we're gonna follow the tour. We can get them in into the show, but we want a place to stay, you know, kind of a thing. And so we did that for the first one, and almost everybody responded with like a yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, dude. These people we've never met before are gonna let us stay at their house. Let's try the next city. Let's see how many of these we can lock in ahead of time, and you know, save some money and not stay in hotels or rest stops. So we did that, and it was pretty amazing how many people were on board with letting us stay with them. I don't know. I kind of can't believe it. Just two random dudes pulling up in a van, living with them for a night, sometimes 3 nights. So anyways, we couldn't get a job on the tour, but we bought a van anyways. And we're like, we're going to follow this tour. And I'm like, we need to like seriously take pictures of this tour, man. Like, I want to remember this forever. So I borrowed a friend's like Sony Handycam, just camcorder. I'm like, we're going to document this trip. That way, we can have this footage to ourselves at the end and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, we show up in Houston on the first day, and everybody's mind's blown. They're like, oh God, you guys were serious about this. Let's make this a little more official. And they took us over to where all the laminates were getting made, and they took our pictures, they laminated it onto like an actual pass. And I'm like, dude, this is official now. So we did the whole tour, man. And again, not knowing really anything about film or whatever, just kind of, I'm like, I'm just going to film this stuff, and it's going to be one of those things where I can just, at any time, you know, in my life, I can just put this tape in and just watch this tape, and that'll kind of be what this is used for. And there really wasn't anyone ever filming any bands. No one ever really taking pictures. I mean, YouTube, I don't even think YouTube was around yet.
I don't think so either.
If it was, it definitely wasn't, you know, what it is today.
I feel like at that point they had like E-Bombs World, and they had like 10 videos you could just pick from, and like that was it.
Yes.
Like they had like the Crazy Frog race car or something. And that was probably the essence of online videos at that point.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I started, you know, seeing a lot of the same guys every day, coming through catering and all this stuff. And I just started, I'm like, I'm just going to start filming like these sets of bands playing. You know, I'm going to start with some of these smaller bands, the ones that I'm not so intimidated by. And I remember one of the first bands that ever filmed was this band from First to Last, who Sonny's in.
Is that Skrillex?
Yeah, Skrillex. I'm like, I'm going to film this band, dude. They're pretty cool, and they're super small, and they were on a tiny stage, but the crowds, I could tell, were getting bigger. And I'm like, I think this is a band that I want to be a part of. So I remember kind of just filming them, you know, just right in the barricade, on stage, all around. I filmed them, I think, maybe for a couple days. I never asked for permission. I just was just filming them just to have. And then I remember one day the drummer was like coming through the lunch line, and he's like, are you the guy that's been filming us? And I'm like, oh dude, I'm busted. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. And he's like, no, it's fine. He's like, can we watch some of that footage? And I'm like, okay, yeah. He's like, all right, man, well, whenever you're done, just come find us. I'm like, all right. So I finish, I go find him. he's like, let's go. We got one of those vans that has like a TV like in between the two like front seats. Let's just plug you in there and watch some of this footage. And I'm like, all right.
Was this VCR
So
footage at the time?
yeah, it has like it had the VCR thing, but I think I was able to connect the like audio video cables from the camera into the TV that they had. And so they started watching some of the footage and they're like, you know, nobody's ever filmed this before. This stuff is awesome, dude. Feel free to film us whenever you want, you know, like just, you know, that was it. And I'm like, oh, cool. You know, thank you. Maybe I should start asking people if I can film them and see how that goes. So that kind of started happening a lot. These bands are like, yeah, dude, just, you know, film us, whatever you want, man. You know, maybe we can have the footage, whatever it is. So that's kind of how that whole tour went. Again, I just filmed on this like high-8 camera, had all this footage, and then I get home and I'm like, I have way more footage and way cooler footage than I think I'd ever imagined that I would get on this tour. I think I should learn how to edit. So I went and I'm like, I think Macs, like I didn't even have a computer. I'm like, I think Macs have like, you know, iMovie or something where you can like edit. It's just like, it comes with the computer. So I bought one and started teaching myself how to edit. I made this like 2-hour movie of the whole trip of the summer, and I'm like, this is awesome. We should you know, maybe take this seriously and maybe make a documentary about us following this tour. Because again, we're like, we want to be on it again next year, 2006, like, or 2005, we want to do it again. So my buddy was like, hey, I got a friend that went to film school. He lives in Orange County. He knows everything there is to know about video cameras and all this stuff. It might also be a good idea to have a third man there on our team, just so we're not just filming each other one-on-one. We can at least have one guy film 2 people doing something. It would make a little more sense. And again, his knowledge of cameras, he was already a professional. Went up there, met this guy, super cool guy. Again, meanwhile, trying to get real jobs on the tour. And obviously that didn't happen. So we bought 2 DVX 100s, which at the time was like the sickest camera that you could ever want. And it was, you know, like $5,000 a camera. We bought 2 of them and I'm like, this is crazy, you know, learn how to use the camera, and just everything looked cinematic through the camera. And I'm like, I was just filming everything, dude. I would go outside and film the plants and I'll be like, oh my gosh, look at this shot. Look how like, it looks like a movie. You know, I'd never seen a handheld camera do that before. This was my first experience into it. And I think that's what really catapulted me wanting to do this, was seeing that I could shoot something that looked like a movie. So again, it was a little bit of a repeat of the year before. However, we had an extra guy, we had nicer cameras. And I think what also is key about the whole situation and Warped Tour is that they kind of like recycle the same bands every year. It's like maybe the bands that were on the small stage are now on the main stage. But you know, we're like, all right, let's follow this tour, man. There's 3 of us. And again, not to I kind of want to jump back. I wrote these down really quick. I want to kind of just go over, like,
Of course.
who was on the tour in 2004 and why this, like.
Well, I was even myself just looking. I looked up 2003, but even still, like the and the thing is too, I feel like if some people aren't like familiar with the genre, I mean, those are prime time for all of those bands. You know, I'm looking right now, 2004, No Effects, Good Charlotte, Bad Religion, Newfound Glory, Coheed and Cambria, Taking Back Sunday, Story of the Year, Bouncing Souls, American Rejects, Anti-Flag, Simple Plan, Alkaline Trio, Thursday, like you'd said, Flogging Molly, And the list goes on and on.
Yeah, dude. Avenged Sevenfold on like a side stage, like that was crazy to see, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you just listed at that time, and you know, even still today, that is like my favorite type of music. And so, getting to see that every day, like waking up in the morning, looking up at the inflatable set list of all the bands, being like, okay, here's who I'm going to see today. You know, today I'm going to see 10 of my favorite bands. I've already seen them 30 days in a row, but you know, I'm going to see them one more time. It was crazy, dude. And so, yeah, then again, like getting the 2005 list where it's Atreyu, Billy Idol, Fall Out Boy, Good Charlotte, Hawthorne Heights, My Chemical Romance, Simple Plan, Story of the Year, Thrice, Avenged Sevenfold, All American Rejects, The Transplants, Offspring, Seosin, Under Oath. Like it goes on. And I'm just like, I love all these bands. I want to, you know, I'm going to film these bands. I'm going to interview these people. I'm going to just, you know, make a documentary about it. And kind of the goal was to get all this content, spend the off season making this, and then maybe in 2006, we can have a booth and we can sell this documentary, and that'll be kind of how this story closes up. So again, we started the tour, and the guy we were with, the new guy, I don't think had ever left Southern California before. Very rich kid, never left Southern California before.
No travels or anything like that, just kind of home base.
Yes. And so putting him in a van with two other guys where, you know, as much fun as the day is, we're still like working a lot of that time. And it's hot too. Some of these cities are just so hot, humid. I mean, it's the middle of the summer. And it is a long day. Then all of a sudden you got to get in a van and drive to the next city and then somehow find time to sleep and be ready for the next day. It's obviously, that part sucks. I mean, that's definitely the worst part about it. You know, some of these cities are hundreds of miles apart and you're like, all right, man, well, we're going to have to definitely split this up. And we're most likely going to basically just drive into the venue and start it all over with no rest time. Really took a toll on this guy. He did not like it at all. He wasn't even really having fun with the music part. So it didn't really last too long for him, dude. He ended up bailing in Salt Lake City. He's like, hey guys, I bought a plane ticket, I'm out of here. And just like that, that's about as long as the conversation went. He flew home, which left me and my buddy. And we're like, well, now what, man? Like, obviously filming just you is like super dumb. You know, maybe we switch gears a little bit and focus a little bit more on filming content for these bands. So that's kind of what we did. We started filming bands a lot more and taking that a little more seriously, made it a little bit less about us and more of these performances, which ended up kind of being a good thing. Yeah, so we did that 2005. And then, I don't know, the story's kind of the same, 2006 and 2007. We did the tours. 2006, again, was just for fun, followed it, filming bands. After the 2005, I got my first real job. Hawthorne Heights wanted me to come out on tour with them it was like a week, 2 weeks, and just film content and then give them the footage, and they were gonna like make this part of their like CD, DVD release. I'm like, all right, cool. So I went out on tour with those guys, and it was super fun. I think it was Hawthorne Heights, Silverstein, and Bayside. So it was a pretty rad lineup, and it was my first like paid job, really even living on a bus. I've been living, you know, in the vans that we bought and all that kind of stuff. And all that. So yeah, kind of in between the Warped Tour years, I started getting real jobs in film and less landscaping jobs, which I had been doing, I think, up till then. So yeah, 2005, I moved up to LA, and I had basically just put a bunch of live videos together from me on the road. All these bands that I'd filmed, I'd make these like live music videos, and I just kind of put them together in iMovie. And you know, I even at the time didn't think they were that great, but they got the job done, and I was happy about them. And this company up in LA was like, let's see what you got. I showed them these iMovie Warped Tour videos, and they're like, cool, man, like, why don't you move to LA and start working up here? And that's when I moved to LA. I couldn't believe that I got my buddy that I was with, even they hired both of us. I was like, we both want the job. And they're like, all right. He hadn't even like really learned how to edit yet. And I'm like, I'll just show him this. I'd say we both did these. And, you know, they bid on it. And we both moved up there. We're like, what are we doing, man? Like, we got to figure this out. Because we're like, they're not going to have iMovie at the office, man. They're going to have Final Cut Pro. So we legit, going back to kind of like what I was saying earlier about bullshitting, man, like that's it right there, man. I'm like, yeah, dude, we know After Effects, we know Final Cut Pro, dude. Give us the job. And we got it, and we moved up there. And yeah, our job up there was to build content for this new website. They had like this new technology of how to stream videos and all this stuff. And so we would go out and we'd interview bands and then make a video about, you know, the interview and their show and all that stuff. And we did that for a couple of years, and it kind of just wasn't great. But yeah, I don't know. It gets a little boring after that. I left that job up there, came back down to San Diego again, not with no job, just moved back in with my parents. And that's when a friend was like, hey, go down to Macbeth. They want to see some of your stuff. They need some guy to help edit videos and all that stuff. Went down there, and that's when I saw this guy. And
the guy
still
from Warped Tour, you're saying, who recognized
Yeah,
you.
I saw this guy. I was like, oh man, this guy, because he'd walked by a couple times, and I'm like, oh man, that guy looks familiar.
Yeah, like, why do I know this guy?
Why do I know this guy? And so yeah, he was like, you look familiar, which yeah, I think we're on Warped Tour together. And he's like, oh, that's right. And so I started doing freelance for Macbeth. I want to say 2005, 2006. And again, it wasn't really filming a lot. It was a lot of, they already had like a dude that filmed, and he couldn't keep up with all the post. So it was like, here's a lot of footage. And I'm like, oh man, you know, this is cool. It's like just all the bands that they worked with, just interviews and stuff like that. They seemed to like what I was making. So, I mean, I did freelance with them. I mean, I'm for that guy that I saw, I'm still doing work with him. I mean, I talked to him yesterday, and I did a bunch of stuff for him yesterday.
What was he part of? Like at that time, was he part of Macbeth, or was he part of?
Yeah, I think he was like marketing, maybe managing. Now he's managing. But I think at the time it was more marketing. And yeah, now he's just managing, but he manages, you know, some pretty rad bands. You know, Tom being one of them. And it just, yeah, we like each other, and he likes what I do, and we have a really good relationship. And, you know, just out of nowhere, he'll be like, hey man, you know, this is happening. Sorry, it's last minute. Are you available to do this? Or, you know, this band's coming to town. Are you able to go down and take pictures or film or whatever? So that's just been a really good relationship. And I really like that guy, and I'm thankful that I happen to be sitting in that seat that day that he walked by. And it really started a pretty awesome relationship. And so again, I did freelance for them from 2005 to basically 2012.
And this is with Macbeth.
With Macbeth. And at first it was a lot of posts, and then it would be like, hey, can you come into the office? We have, some new shoes, like come pick them up and, take some pictures. And that's, I think, one of the first times when I saw Tom, and I don't remember the exact moment the first time I saw him, but I just remember seeing him in passing and just like, wow, dude, this guy's like taller than I thought he'd be.
Well, it's funny because I had a tattoo done on my forearm in New York City. His name was Bart Bingham, and we were just shooting the shit. And I have Blink's self-titled album tattooed on my back. And I was telling him about that, and he goes, "Yeah, I met those guys." He's like, "They're tall as fuck." And I was like, "Yeah, from what I've heard." And but even this is amazing, really. And before we kind of dive into that whole world of like the Macbeth and Tom and everything like that, and kind of what you were doing after that point, I think you were in like very, very, like I was saying, prominent times for Warped Tour. Those bands were, I think, I would say they were at their prime, like that genre was at their prime, and still, it's prominent today. But what were you doing on that off time? Like, what were you doing when you would go and do this, and you said you weren't like making like the income you maybe would have wanted to support yourself? So like, what were you doing? Were you still like working odd jobs back home? Was your family like, what the fuck, or what the hell are you doing? Like, what was going on?
My family was always supportive. They never, like, are you sure you want to do this? Or, maybe, you should find something more stable. My parents have always been super cool. And I don't know why. I guess I never really talked to him about that. Like, this kid that lived at home and then would leave for the summer and then come back and not really have like stability. I kind of, right after high school, I went to a junior college, and I was like, I never loved school. I just went because you got to go. And so I did 2 years at the junior college, and I'm like, I'd already gone on tour twice, and I'm like, I just want to be on tour, man. Like, I got to figure out how that's what I want to do. And I'm quickly finding out that there's going to be no degree here that's going to be like, oh, let's hire that guy to go on the road because he's got a degree in this. It's all about who you know. Like, I went on tour with Hawthorne Heights. They hadn't even seen my work. It's just the fact that I was around them and they were comfortable with me, where it's like, let's just bring that guy. Like, we already know that guy. Let's just bring him out. And that's how a lot of this started, man. It's all about who you know, dude. Like, when I meet somebody, or I'm hiring somebody, I'll look at their resume and it's nice to see where they've been and all that. But I just want to see the work, man. Like, if your work is cool, then let's work together. If it's not, then I don't care how much time you've spent at other companies or where you've been or went to school. It's like, if your work's cool, then we're going to be friends.
And like you were saying too, having the compatibility with the personality and having clear communication, I think is I think clear communication is very important in those types of environments and in this medium that you do, especially with music. But to be like, hell yeah, you're dope. This is pretty simple. It kind of just opens up the highway for a little bit of a easier approach to the work,
Yeah. So kind of going back to the jobs that I had. So the early years that I was doing Warped Tour, really I was just I was working for an uncle mowing lawns. My dad had a gas station, so I would be, working the cashier. Like, those were my jobs, dude. And it's just like counting down the days till the next tour. But yeah, my parents were super supportive. I mean, my dad at his shop had this huge giant, it was probably the size of this calendar right here, map of the United States, which each city and like lines going to each city with Warped Tour at the very top of it. And he's like, this is what my son does, like he's going to go travel the United States and see all these people and film bands. So, I mean, they liked it, I think they saw how happy it made me, and that's really all they cared about. But yeah, so landscaping, cashier jobs, and then, the mid 2000s was LA, and then hated LA, so I moved back down here. And then in 2007, I actually, there's this nonprofit called Invisible Children. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. Mm-hmm. It's the story. I mean, it's a complicated story. 3 guys from San Diego went to Africa to find this story that I think they had a story in mind, but when they got there, they found a completely different story about child soldiers and night commuting and all this stuff, and it changed them. They ended up making this movie that blew up and started this company called Invisible Children. One of those founders being one of my best friends I've known my whole life. Our parents lived together before they had kids, really close. So I've been on Warped Tour a lot, and I kept telling him, I'm like, dude, I think Invisible Children should be on Warped Tour, man. Like, they need to be on here, because Warped Tour was starting to do like a whole area of like nonprofits where like To Write Love in Our Arms and companies like that were starting to blow up, and bands were super into it. And he's like, okay, well, let's see if that can work. Let me put you in touch with our music guy. Sat down with this guy. I'm like, let's just do it, man. Like, I'm going to do it anyways. So why not just give me one of your vans and I'll set up a tent and talk about Invisible Children, talk about it with the bands. Like, okay. So
if you don't mind real quick, why don't, if you can, what was the whole, you were saying short, but Invisible Children, what did it dive deeper into? Like, what were you talking about when you were on the tour?
So when I was on the tour, we were just kind of what Invisible Children started doing was making these short documentaries once or twice a year, generally the same topic, but a different character and that person's storyline. And what would happen was they would tour these films, and they would go to schools and churches and anywhere that would allow them to show this movie, they would do. So, they would make the movie, and then all the volunteers would, spend their 3 months going out on the road in these vans and just showing the movie in different parts of the United States. And I'm like, well, I know, that's the one thing we can't do is show the movie, but I'm like, I think there's enough momentum behind this company right now, Invisible Children, that I don't think we need to show the movie for us to sell stuff. I think we can get the bands wearing the t-shirts. They can maybe say something on stage, just people walking by curious about like what this is. Let's just do it and see what happens. So we were the first ones, I'm pretty sure, to tour for Invisible Children, but not show the movie. But it was just us kind of networking with the bands. Again, a lot of people that we were friends with, and this was when, like, I think on this tour it was like Thrice, and they became really involved with Invisible Children. Family Force 5, they became really involved, and they just started talking about it on stage. We started doing signings, like, hey, they'd say something about Invisible Children at 2:00. We're going to do a signing. Come check it out. Buy a t-shirt, buy the movie. And so kind of started that band relationship there with Invisible Children. And yeah, that's kind of how that year went. And that happened to be my last tour for the Warped Tour. I'm like, all right, man, it's 2007 now. I think it's time to possibly find a real job, as depressing as it was, and do that. So I was kind of looking, and then my friend from Invisible Children was like, hey, it's not a lot, but we have all these tapes that they shot kind of from their first movie, because basically from 2000, I mean, even up to that point, 2003 to 2008 is when I got hired. Everything was shot on tape, and they just had this huge cabinet with drawers with tapes in it, thousands of tapes, dude, just unlabeled tapes. And he was like, hey man, do you want to come in and log all this footage and, you know, write down what, you know, number the tape, write down the time code, who's on the screen at this time, and all that. And I'm like, all right, sure, yeah, I'll come in, I'll do that for a month. So I started doing that, and, you know, obviously it took definitely a little bit longer than a month. I think maybe 3 months to actually transcribe all those tapes. Literally just sit there and watch tapes all day. Of some stuff was funny, some stuff was inspiring, a lot of stuff was just really opened me up to something I had never seen. I'd only seen what's in the movie, and there's just a lot of trauma and a lot of...
This is in terms of, you're saying, all the child experience and the exposure to the...
Yeah. And I mean, not to get like too graphic, but it'd be like, you know, here's a boy that had to, you know, murder his brother, otherwise they would have killed him. Or like, here's a person that's talking to you that had their nose, lips, and ears cut off, but they're still super happy that they're alive and all this stuff. And I had just never seen anything like that. And it definitely, I don't know, man, it definitely had an impact on me. Most of the people that worked at Invisible Children, I would say 90, somewhere in the 90%, everyone that worked there was working there because they saw one of these movies that like changed their life, and they were going to do whatever they could, even if it was unpaid, to help out this cause. So that kind of started happening to me, not as much as them. I mean, mainly it was because, you know, my best friend was the founder of this company, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I'm like, man, everyone that works here is so... This was like the first, again, it was early in my career, but it was like the first time where everyone is just like really happy and wants to help each other out. They all want to just make the best thing possible. And it wasn't like the other, you know, video jobs that I've had or in LA where everyone's just trying to like steal ideas and move themselves up. This was the first time where everyone just wanted to help each other out. Like, titles didn't mean anything, dude. It was just, let's just do our job. Let's make the best piece of media that we can.
And that happened while you were in LA?
No, I'm just saying, when I was in LA, like looking back on it while I was at Invisible Children early on, I was like, this is very different.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was in San Diego too. So it's got that laid back, you know, we had an office down a block from the beach. And so it'd be like, you know, on your lunch break, you'd swim out to the pier and back. I mean, it was super San Diego living.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so different. I'm like, man, I love being around these people.
Sounds like a good sense of like camaraderie.
Yeah, man. Just everyone was just so cool. And so I had logged all these tapes, and then after that, they kind of, the three founders were like, so now that you know all this footage better than anyone here at the company, you want to help us work on a feature film? And I was like, sure. And they're like, you can edit, right? And I'm like, yeah, I can edit. And they're like, all right, cool, man. Like, let's start working on a timeline. And I remember we had this like giant, it was probably like 3 to 4 feet roll of paper, and we just started writing ideas out. This timeline of what this movie was going to be about, and it went around the entire office, the whole perimeter of the office. We hung it up, and we're like, "Oh man, make this timeline." And I'm like, "Oh crap, dude, this is going to take a while."
Now, was this a timeline of the events, or your guys like strategic planning for releasing the movie?
This was like the act 1, act 2, act 3 of this feature documentary that we were gonna make, and it's basically just like, oh, remember when this happened? This is important. Let's put it in there. Oh, remember when this happened? Obviously a lot of this was going to get cut, but let's see all of this together and then just start chopping away at it, once we can see it.
I mean, it even almost reminds me kind of like that approach. And you guys doing everything all analog at that time, but even like a musician, they'll be like, okay, we got 20 songs and then let's go down. Maybe we'll check out these. So that's what it kind of reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot of space, but anyway, continue.
Yeah. So, long story short on that one, it never got released. I think there were a couple other things that took priority. And I kind of started bouncing around working on shorter, like 1 to 2 minute videos about events and updates and things like that were getting a lot of traction. Still, the feature was there. It was just kind of, we'll work on it, because we just didn't know what we were going to do with it. We just kind of like, it was always kind of there. I mean, we were spending money on it, getting music for it and all that stuff, but it just kind of, I don't think there was ever really a plan. But again, we're still making these yearly, bi-yearly documentaries that were doing pretty good. And then we had an idea for a new one. And this, I think, was going to be maybe one of the first ones we were going to make that wasn't specifically about a child that was affected by the war. It was going to be about us telling the story and this problem to the people here, but how are we going to do it? Because it's so complicated. It's such a complicated issue. There's so many things that go into it, and just how are we going to explain this in like 30 minutes? So we decided, one of our founders, why don't you tell your son what you do for a living? And that way it will kind of dumb it down, I guess, a little bit and make it very easy to understand and digest. If you were telling a kid that's in elementary school, like, that you chase warlords for a living, it just we're like, maybe this will make it easy to understand, and it's an idea that we haven't done yet.
Now, this is, you had told me prior. Now, are you speaking in particular to the Coney project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't, even for listeners, if you dive in, explain and tell them that whole project, because it's so funny, man. When you mentioned that, I was like, why do I know that? Like kind of like how you felt with that guy. I was like, why do I know this? So when I looked it up, I remembered almost every single piece of that video, but I'd forgotten about it, because it's been a little bit of time. But yeah, I mean, that was a big deal. So why don't you dive in and kind of explain to people that that's the project you were working on? Because I think the audience absolutely would remember that,
Yeah. So yeah, Coney 2012, man. Again, going at this video like it was just going to be any other project that we'd ever done. We're going to do it. This will be, I don't think we were going to tour this one. This was just going to be an online streaming video. Let's just make it, but let's make it a little more legitimate than the other ones we've done, because kind of before it was just like, use whatever music you want, use whatever, like, it's no big deal. That was kind of our thought process back in the day. We haven't been in trouble yet. We'll just ask for forgiveness if we get busted for using all these, all these bands' songs. So we hired a person to do like video clearance because we wanted to like pull a lot of YouTube videos to kind of like set this whole thing up. And the storyline for this definitely took a lot of twists and turns, but the core of it kind of was always there.
Uh-huh. And now, when did you guys start? Now, the whole premise was 2011, 2012. When did you guys start this? And now, is the friend you're speaking of, is it Jason? Was that your friend?
So my friend that I grew up with was Laren. He was one of the three. Laren, Bobby, and Jason were the three.
Russell, the last name Russell?
Yes, Jason Russell, yeah. So yeah, he kind of just jumping back to 2011. I do want to tell this part. Sorry to interrupt the Coney story, but
no, it's okay. Just because I'm just curious, even still, like as you were starring the Invisible Children, and I just wonder, like, at what point was that starting? Like, was it 2010, 2011 when you guys started this whole expansion into the Coney project?
I want to say 2011, and I had never had any interest whatsoever going to Uganda or anything like that. I'm just like, dude, I've seen enough of this footage to know that that's a place I don't ever want to go to ever. And that was, 2008 said it, 2009, 10 said it. And then 2011, they're like, hey man, there's this trip coming up. Some of our donors want to go out there and we want to show them, our programs on the ground, show them what we do, show them how their money's spent. But we want to document, their trip. You're always the first guy we're coming to. Do you want to go? And I'm like, all right, dude, like, I think this is the trip I want to go on. So that was my first trip, 2011. It was the very beginning of 2011. Went out there with some of these donors, which was just so much fun, dude. It was my first time, so like I'm experiencing it with them. And it's, there were times where it was hard to kind of like keep filming because I just wanted to like experience this myself. But it was also just a really good first trip to be on because we were kind of like, give them the best experience. So, we went on a safari and, went on the Nile and all this stuff. And it was absolutely incredible, dude. So then when I came back, I was all about it. I'm like, anytime we want to go back, I'm down to go back. And so then they were like, well, instead of, always sending somebody out there to film, every couple months to get like some random stuff, like, how would you feel about just going out there and like living out there and just filming for, the rest of the year? And I'd be like, oh, all right, that sounds kind of fun. Let's do that. And they're like, well, we want to, it's 2 people. So you and this girl that I was working with, who is one of my best friends. We were living together. Then we went to Africa together. We went out there and we lived out there for close to 6 months till the end of the year. And, gathering footage for, I don't think we knew we were going to call it Coney 2012 yet, but getting a lot of footage, going to a lot of these places where, Coney believes that he gets his power from this rock, and this tree is where, it all started, and going, interviewing these people and about what they know about Coney, and just listening to the whole story about him. I mean, they believed he had so many powers. It was unbelievable. And it really is just brainwashing, but
like supernatural powers almost.
Yeah. I mean, they believed all kinds of stuff, man. So anyways, got all this footage, came back and started working on it. And I want to say it didn't even take us that too long to actually make, because I'm pretty sure it came out in March of 2012. And I was in Uganda 2011 and came back at Christmas. So I'm pretty sure it was just like a January, February full-time project for me and 2 other editors. I think the way we split it up was I had the middle chunk, the guy had a beginning, another person had the end. And then I think after the first month, then I switched to the beginning. My section of that video is definitely the first 2/3 of Coney.
Now, is it the editing aspects of it? You mean
The editing,
okay.
And I would say a lot of that footage, if it's not like clearly from the early 2000s, anything that looks high definition, I would say I probably captured it. That's in that movie. So yeah, we the goal for that movie was I think 500,000, which is said in the movie. Like, our goal would be if we get 500,000 people to watch this movie by the end of the year, like mission accomplished. And so we had this big LA premiere, and a couple famous people came to it and spoke. And
do you remember who by chance?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jason Bateman was the host. I think Kristen Bell was there. People like that. I mean, they're pretty close to that group of people. Fall Out Boy might have been there. They're really close with Fall Out Boy. But for sure, Jason Bateman, I think, was the host that night for this movie. And so we showed it, and then that's when it went live too. And so these celebrities are tweeting it out because we're share the video. Here's how you share it. Share the video. And we're kind of, after we shared it, we kind of had a party there, and we're starting to get word dude, it's got a lot of hits already, man. This is crazy. We might hit our goal by the end of the year, no big deal. And we're kind of at the end of the night, packing up. We're dude, it's got 100,000 views already. This is strange. We drove back to San Diego that night. The next day was just a normal work day. I remember waking up, looking, and it had over 1 million views already in less than 24 hours. And we're just we get to the office and we're just kind of looking at each other what the hell, dude? And it just was skyrocketing, dude. I mean, by the end of the week, that's when it peaked. By the end of the week, it had 100 million views in a week, which I think was the most viral video of all time. First to 100 million in that short of time. It was wild. We were on the 3rd and 4th floor of this building downtown San Diego, and we had to have security guards at the front door now because news people, just people in general, were trying to get in to talk to us. They wanted to, for good and bad, they wanted to be a part of it. For whatever reason, it was just overwhelming, and people started climbing up the parking garage just to get in the door because people were trying to throw their ideas I own a t-shirt company, use my t-shirts to print your stuff on and this and that. And it was just incredibly overwhelming, dude. It was bizarre. And a lot of these, my phone was ringing too of musicians, and they're dude, this is where you work, right? Is this you? And I'm yeah, man, I worked on it. And they're oh my gosh, whatever you want, whatever you want to do. And that's when I remember sending it to, I think I sent it to Tom's manager, and I was hey, I think Tom should watch this. This was before it, I think this was maybe the second day, I'm hey man, I think Tom would like this. And I think at first it was a little I don't think he's going to watch something this long or whatever, it's a little long. I don't know if this is up his alley. But he watched it, and he's that whole band, this was for Angels and Airwaves, that whole band was wow, what can we do? We'll do, you want to use our music, you want whatever you want, you guys can have it. And I'm we'll have Tom come down here. I want Tom to come to the office and, we'll show him around. And all right, yeah. So Tom came down and I felt pretty cool walking around with Tom, just being like, yeah, here's where I work. And, this room has, all the volunteers and they're over here, these people are answering phone calls, getting donations. These people over here are, working on this and that. It was wild. I mean, it was just shoulder to shoulder at that time, man. We were just so overwhelmed. The company was always pretty successful, I feel like. And it was something where, we made more money in that week than I think the company had made in its entirety, just based off of that one film. It was crazy. And then, 7 days in, when we kind of hit our peak, is when Jason kind of had an episode, and it kind of dwindled from there. And I was already thinking, I don't know. I don't really want to talk about that situation too much because I think there's a lot of, I don't know. I just don't really want to get into that one.
Right. You just mean kind of like a mental episode, mental crises kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just overwhelming, man. He was flying all over the place, doing a lot of interviews, and I think the media just wasn't leaving him or his family alone a lot of the times. I think there was like photographers following his kids to school and stuff. And,
right.
We had never been in that type of situation before, never experienced it. So it was just all very overwhelming. And so anyways, I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to kind of move on from this chapter, this Invisible Children chapter, and see what else is kind of out there. And so I was talking, well, do you want to talk about anything about that before I'm going to jump into now working full time with Macbeth.
Sure. Well, no, it's just, I think the craziest thing about that video, kind of even just the perspective of why I feel it was so good. You as the editor and your team in general was able, like you were saying, to capture that in such a digestible way. The graphics were top notch. Transitions were top notch. The story was compelling. And I just more so just want to say hats off to that project, because I think you did exactly what you guys set out to do, and you did it in a perfect way. That's why it was so successful. And yeah, you're more than welcome to dive into this next phase, man, for real.
Yeah. I just kind of going back to Invisible Children. Those guys, I think we had the best designers I've ever worked with there, the best animators, the best editors, obviously the best storytellers.
And it was a genuine, that's, I think, the biggest thing too, which it seems you know the whole crew personally, but the message was genuine, the delivery was genuine. And you were saying even the editing, it looks just as good as a 2020 video edit,
Yeah. It's there are definitely, as far as my skill level goes, when I hopped on as an editor at Invisible Children, I knew how to edit, but I was editing where like every single cut that I made on a timeline had like a cross dissolve, and it was just like, oh my God, dude, it was just garbage looking back on it. The stuff that I made back in the day is just trash. They taught me how to do what I do now. As far as my like learning curve went, when I got there, it just like, I learned everything I know now about editing. That just everyone there is just so freaking talented and amazing. And again, these people are doing it because they want to be part of this movement. And so you have these incredibly talented people that are working there for like no money at all. Some of these people are just working there for free. And I'm like, with these skills that are just, you could make a ton of money with this skill set, man. But, they're choosing to work there for very little pay. And I think, that was pretty cool.
Now, is the editing side of things, like in that situation, did Invisible Children like hire the team, or is it something where Invisible Children goes to like an editing group, or do they just kind of build their own team and you learn from there?
Yeah, we had our own team there. So everyone that edited, filmed, designed, wrote, directed was on staff there. And I mean, I think the only thing we didn't really have was, like a composer. But we worked with people to write music. And then, as we're growing and getting a little more notoriety, I think a lot of musicians kind of just donated their music to us. And all that. I think even when we were making Coney 2012, it's just like some of the clips that we had in there, some people just gave us for free because of who we were. Some wanted money, but I think for the most part, a lot of that was, we had a good name for ourselves. So we were able to make all our movies for pretty cheap, especially looking at some of the budgets that I work with now and stuff, and what's impossible now. Nothing was really impossible at Invisible Children. We were going to find a way to make it work, or everybody was just so helpful, and it wasn't about how much something costs or how much you're going to get paid. They were just for the cause.
And the thing is too, which is pretty sick, is it wasn't only just like the clickbait view count, because you guys led, I believe it was President Barack Obama ended up deploying a team out there, not for combat, but there was an official statement reassuring, and that did happen, and that's because of you guys.
I forgot about that, man. I mean, that's how crazy it was there. I mean, that movie definitely put a little fire under the White House, as far as like, dude, look at all these people that are asking for help. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100%, but I think what happened was his daughter, I think, had saw the film and said, "Dad, what are you going to do about this?"
That's sick. That's so cool.
Yeah. And this bill got drafted, and I heard it's super uncommon for anyone to really be there when these types of documents are signed, but they allowed, it was the three founders and the CEO to go to the White House and stand there and watch him sign this bill, in the Oval Office. And it's just, I mean, still when I look at that photo, I'm like, this is photoshopped, right? Like, there's no way that like my friends are standing there in the White House as President Barack Obama is like signing this bill. It's just wild. We never thought that this would ever get, to that level.
And I really think that that's one of the craziest parts, because there's a lot of clickbait, there's a lot of view counts, but that endeavor, to me, undeniably did something special.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I was like, all right, man, well, I think I'm going to get out while I'm on top here. I'm going to start looking for a new job, seeing what else is out there. And again, San Diego is like, there ain't a ton of options as far as especially full-time video jobs.
Mm-hmm. It almost sounds like San Diego, and correct me where I need to be corrected, it almost sounds like once you kind of have an established situation, you can kind of head back there and do your thing. Is that kind of how you feel, or is it more so you could get lucky finding an opportunity, or is it a good spot to say, hey, I got this under my belt, I'm going to go back to San Diego and work from there?
I think it's pretty limiting as far as like what's available. I think if you're going to do freelance, I think it wouldn't be impossible. I mean, even a lot of work I do now, that's what's good about being a post guy is that you can kind of just be sent footage and edit wherever.
And by post, you mean post-production?
Yeah, post-production. So just, cool. Yeah, the editing aspect of it. But, I mean, there's not a lot of exciting full-time jobs doing what I do in San Diego.
Like you were saying before, that's mostly LA.
Yeah, it's definitely for sure LA. That's like what that whole city is. Here it's just a little harder to find. And I mean, even a lot of the jobs that I do now, it's like, even where I work now at this agency, it's like, we'll go to LA to shoot the spot. You know what I mean? Because that's just where all the talent is. That's where it's easier to get a permit up there.
How far is the drive?
Well, right now, man, there ain't no traffic. So you probably get up there in an hour and a half, I feel like.
With traffic, because I sat in LA traffic once, and so I grew up 45 minutes west of Manhattan.
Okay.
And my God, I mean, New York City traffic sucks. A kid who would play drums with me lived in Rockville, Maryland, which was towards the DC area. And even still, DC traffic was just out of this world, dude. But LA traffic, my God, that's a different beast.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have traffic in San Diego, but it doesn't come close to LA, because LA just has traffic on every street.
Yeah.
San Diego, it's like there's going to be traffic, but there's only going to be traffic during these hours and only on these freeways. In LA, it's just no matter. It could be 3 a.m. and it'll just be nonstop traffic on the freeway, and you're like, who's up right now?
Yeah. So what's the drive with traffic?
So the drive with traffic, I mean, you still kind of gauge it like, okay, well, I need to be up there at this time, so I'm gonna just, I think if you can get up there in 2.5 hours, that's an easy ride. And that's kind of, I think my last couple drives up there on, before COVID, 2.5 hours is, I feel pretty good about myself for getting up there that quick. So, but it's been taken, I mean, I've driven home and it's taken, 4+ hours, and it's just nonstop the whole way. And there's not even accidents. It's just
a shit ton of people.
Yeah.
So once you were saying, once you finished up with this Coney thing, you're like, all right, I'm gonna move forward. What were you doing after that? You said you went back to Macbeth?
Yeah. So I'd been doing freelance for Macbeth. I had never worked with them full time. So me and one of the guys that were working there, this is a different guy now, kind of was like, man, if you ever need me full time, like I'm ready to come on full time. There were a lot of projects. A lot of the stuff that I was doing was just like product videos. So it'd be like, we got a bunch of new shoes, make little like 30-second teasers for these and all that kind of stuff. And interviewing bands, because they do a lot of collaborations with artists and the shoes. The artist will design the shoe and I'll interview them and talk about the process. And just always kind of hinting at them probably 2 years prior, just like, I'm ready, if you ever want to do something full time. And so it got to a point where they were thinking about making a flagship store here in San Diego. And so they had this idea where they're like, hey, Kevin, here's kind of the situation. We have this store that we're going to open. It's going to be a tiny little store. However, we want you to be on the team, making videos, but we just don't think that there's enough content to have that be a full-time job right now. So how would you feel about doing video, but also running the store? And we could set the store up where, there might be like a little lounge area, and anytime, a musician or a band comes through town, or even a skater or surfer, anyone that's like on the team is in town, we can like kind of set up this area and you can do an interview and, film them in the store and all this stuff. And, we can do a lot of content that way. And I'm like, all right, man, like I was kind of just so ready to leave Invisible Children that I was just like, yeah, man, that isn't my dream. But it's something because I'll, get to film and all that stuff. I'd never worked in retail before. So that part wasn't really appealing to me, but the rest of it was. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I quit Invisible Children and then started working at Macbeth. And I remember going to the store when it was like done, and I was kind of like looking around and I'm like, this isn't really what I thought we talked about. It was just a shoe store. There was no lounge area. There was no where to really film in there. I mean, it was maybe the size of this office, dude. It was tiny.
I've been to the Stars storefront about that.
Okay, yeah. It's because you've been to that one.
Yeah, I've been to Encinitas when I was on the West Coast. So that was like the national parks were on the list for sure, but just as high up on that list was I gotta go there. I have to.
Yeah. So yeah, just around the corner, it's in that same block building. Around the corners where the shoe store used to be. And dude, I love Encinitas, man. It's, if I could afford to live there, that's where I'd be. I love it, dude. The vibe up there is just amazing. So it was cool. I mean, it was the shop, and then like, next to the shop was like a really cool surf shop. And then attached to the shoe shop was, this area that got turned into, where they could shape surfboards. And Rob Machado, who's like this famous surfer, lives in San Diego. He started renting that space out and shaping boards. And so that guy was just there all the time. And I'm like, oh man, this is freaking awesome, dude. But yeah, I was like, this isn't what I guess I thought it was going to be. It ended up kind of just turning into retail, majority of the time, because there was no really spot to film. I just started managing the people that worked there and, doing inventory and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't really want to do this. And the videos I was making were always just kind of like last minute, like, hey, this guy's coming down to get some shoes, like, take some pictures of him doing it, and stuff like that. And I don't know, man, it wasn't what I thought. I don't know. I only wanted to do video stuff, and video was probably less than 20% of that job. And I was just like, kind of got to get out of here. Which was a bummer, man, because, I still was like filming some stuff that I wanted to. We had, signings there and small shows there. And I would make little videos of bands that did come through, and I'd film them in the store, like playing a song, and make a video out of that, and, Tom was there all the time, which was cool. And he would just kind of be like stopping by, or like, hey man, like, let me say this really quick on camera, and like, let's put this up. Always just kind of, I don't think it was ever planned. So that's just like, always caught off guard, like, oh dude, like, I don't have my stuff here. But yeah, I honestly, I don't think I worked there. I think I worked there for not even 6 months. I was just like, man, I need to get out of here. So I ended up leaving with nothing lined up. I'm just like, I just don't want to, I was pretty unhappy. I like the company, dude. And I like the people that I work with. It was just like, I think maybe a misunderstanding maybe of what this job actually was, or maybe once it started with this being a flagship store and the traffic that it was going to get was like, oh, that's the full-time job, not the video part. And I don't know. I'm like, I need to be filming stuff, dude. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, need the creative side of your brain to be
Yeah.
going. It almost reminds me, have you ever heard of, I think it's based out of San Diego. It's like Red Trolley Performances or something.
I know the beer. There's a beer called Red Trolley.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I have to check. There's Anthony Green, who was in Seosin Circa Survive. You know who that is?
Yeah, I did. I actually did some stuff with them. I went out to Pennsylvania and filmed them doing a record.
Which record was it?
I want to say this was in the mid 2000s. So
On Letting Go, Blue Sky Noise, and that
it might have been that one, but I'm not sure.
was it the album cover with the hot air balloon?
Okay, so it might have. Because I feel like they have the same artist that does all that artwork where it kind of looks similar. It might be the hot air balloon. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I don't remember. I just remember being out there. It was a lot of interviews and like walking around their like home, like this small town, them going into shops and stuff. Not a ton of like writing music, but more of just them hanging out, them sitting. I remember just interviewing them in the woods. I mean, this studio was just in the middle of the forest, and just filming them for a few days. But yeah, dude, I've done that. That was exciting too, because Seosin was kind of one of the first bands that got me into this.
With Anthony Green?
With Anthony Green, that first like EP they put out that had like 5 songs on it.
And each one of them just smacks.
Dude, yeah, just hits, dude.
Still to this day.
Still to this day. And so I remember being a fan of them, and then when he left to do Circa, I'm like, dude, Circa's pretty cool too. And so I started watching Circa live on Warped, and then getting to work with them. I'm like, it's definitely debatable at the time whether I liked Circa more or Seosin. That first Circa record was like super rad too, and I'm like Anthony Green can write good songs, and so I started doing stuff for them, and then I also started doing stuff for Seosin when they had Cove on doing on that stuff. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like getting to work with both of these bands was super fun. I did like a little tour, Southern California tour with Seosin, where they played, they did like a Best Buy tour where they would put a stage either in the parking lot, or they don't really have this in San Diego. It's more of like an LA thing, but they would have like almost like a mini Guitar Center, like in a Best Buy. And they would do like shows in there, like acoustic shows. And so I just went on this tour with them, and just slept at the bassist's house on his couch. Yeah, that was a fun time too.
Well, Dave Bakey, the guy who we just released his episode, he's starting a project with Steve Clifford from Circa.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they're going to be releasing this new material. He didn't say when, but I know that they're in the process of working on it. And it's going to be pretty wild. And so I'm, like I was kind of saying, I'm from Northwest Jersey, and I live in Delaware now. This is where I'm actually in my house right now. But the podcast network's based out of Delaware. So we're about an hour and a half south, 2 hours from Philly, 2.5 hours from Baltimore, nothing too crazy. And this type of music is huge out this way. I mean, big. A lot of these bands are from here, Philly is Circa Survive based, Taking Back Sunday, brand new. Those guys are all New York. My Chemical Romances, and Jersey themselves. But so I just looked up. Yeah, it's called a Red Trolley Show, and I'm almost certain it's out of San Diego, and it's kind of like you were saying how you were wondering if you were going to be shooting people in that store. It's just like Anthony Green sitting in this trolley, awesome.
Okay.
Awesome video. And just a cool little concept. And I wonder if that's what they were kind of feeling for when they wanted you to be over at Macbeth, if you guys were going to do something like that, you know?
Yeah. And I'm also looking this up on YouTube. It looked familiar. At least this like concept looks somewhat familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's crazy too. As like a fan, you know, and a musician myself within a band, those are some big inspirations, all the bands you've named, but I love Anthony Green. Like I was saying, Tom is the Lord and Savior, I say. And there was a picture Tom put up with Anthony Green at To the Stars, and I was like, God damn, like these sick bastards.
Yeah.
You know, so it is networked. But what did you do what did you end up deciding to do? Did you go freelance after Macbeth?
Yeah, so I'm like, I quit Macbeth with like nothing lined up. I'm like, I needed to like kind of reset myself. I just needed to figure it out. I just wanted to get out, and I'd figure it out later. So I was kind of just sitting around, and my friend that I had done work tour with, he was like, hey man, like I'm driving out to, Oklahoma. I got a friend out there that I'm going to chase some tornadoes with. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, that sounds freaking awesome, dude. Like, yeah. He's like, all right, kind of the deal is, we can do this, but, if he can use our footage, because he makes these like videos and about him chasing and stuff. I'm like, yeah, dude, like whatever. Like, I'll totally give him the footage if I can tag along and possibly see a tornado. I'd never seen one before or anything like that. So we drove out there, and it's wild, man. These guys that chase storms, dude.
Yeah, what the hell is that like?
So you wake up super early in the morning and you look at these maps, and you're like, that have weather on them, and you just kind of like, it's a guessing game, dude. You're just like, I think this one is going to turn into a tornado today. So you're going to drive 4 hours to get there, and you get there and you're like, oh dude, it's totally a dud. We should have went north. There's one up there today, So it's a lot of rolling the dice, not seeing stuff starting to form. It's almost on the ground, but it never touches. And it's, I'm like, God, I want to see one so bad. And then I remember it's our last day there, and we wake up and the guy's like, this one's going to be one. This one right here is going to be one.
How long were you out there for at this time? Like, was this something where you like lived out there? Or like what?
No, we stayed at this guy's house. He chases for a living and sells, well, I don't know if it's for a living, but he sells footage. He goes out and chases and then sells it to like the news stations, does all that kind of stuff. So he's like, this is going to be one today. And we're like, all right. So we pack up and we go out there, and these guys just have, their cars are just like, I don't know, it's like a small SUV type of car, like a Cherokee or something. And it looks like a normal car on the outside, but when you're on the inside, it's just got laptops and screens everywhere with like just weather maps and live updates and all that kind of stuff, just so they can chase this stuff live. You pull up to where you think it's going to be, and there are several other people in the same situation. Like this is like a community. They all know each other. They're all chasers. There was even this guy out there that built this gnarly truck. It looked like it'd be in a Batman movie, that just had it almost kind of looked like the Cybertruck, but bigger. Where what it was doing is it would drive into a tornado, and it would lower itself onto the ground, and then it had this thing in the middle where there was a 360 IMAX camera, and he would go in and he'd be filming the inside of a tornado, and shooting a movie for, I think, like Nat Geo or something weird like that. So that guy obviously had like the car that everyone looked at, because everyone else was just in like a normal car and kept their distance.
Yeah, it makes sense. Damn.
This guy was definitely going into it. So last day, kind of waiting for it to happen. Storms coming, and sure enough, you start hearing the alarms going off in the city. We start going one way on a freeway, and we are the only car going this direction, and it's bumper to bumper traffic exiting the city. And so I think that's when my heart started racing a little bit. I'm like, what are we doing right now, man? We're like, I'm looking across the street, everyone's trying to get the hell out of here, and we are the only car that's going into this town. And we chase this tornado, and it's kind of like a weird thing, because so this tornado ended up being the widest tornado ever in the United States. It was like over 2.5 miles wide, the El Reno tornado.
And this is Oklahoma, you're saying?
Yeah, Oklahoma, El Reno. Yeah, Oklahoma. And the thing is that it was so big that it looked like just kind of like a cloud was just like sitting on the ground. It did not look like a funnel at all. It was just so, like, we got so close where you were like literally looking left and right. It was just so big. It was, and the storm was so low to the ground too. So it was weird. We were chasing this thing that just kind of looked like a cloud was on the ground. Obviously it was very windy, and we just, cause you have the radio on to kind of like listen to like where they think it's going to go. And it was weird, man. People that are on the radio just like screaming, like, this just happened, this power box just exploded. And I'm like, it was definitely an adrenaline rush, man. You got the people that are on the radio yelling, which is scary, and then you're trying to chase this thing but not be too close, but it's, this tornado could turn in any direction at any moment. But yeah, so we shot that, and then we just left it. We left the next day, but it's weird because this tornado happens, and then, like blink of an eye, it just stops, and then everything just goes back to normal. I mean, it probably 30 minutes after that tornado came and like destroyed the town, we went to like Applebee's and had dinner. You know what I mean?
Half all bad.
Like, yeah. It's like everything just goes back to normal as soon as the storm's done. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And I remember the next day, we were leaving the next day, and so we kind of drove through the town, and it's just demolished, just smashed. And I'm like, this is sad, dude. I can't believe this is something that happens here. And I know kind of, every state or whatever has their own natural disasters. We have landslides and fires. There's a fire here right now. But for some reason, tornadoes just seem like way worse. I don't know what it is, but yeah, so it just happened the last day we were there. We saw one. It wasn't the picturesque type of tornado that you'd think, but it was still amazing to chase and all that.
Definitely a experience and perspective adder. I mean, not every day. I mean, I've never out on the East Coast, like I said, that's never seen it. Never. I don't know if I ever will. I don't know if I want. I don't know if I want to, but if I had a friend who was like, "Hey, you want to go chase a tornado?" I'd probably be like, "Yeah, sure. If you can hook it up, and I'll sit in the back seat, let's do it." But yeah, that's. But you said you didn't like the material you got, or just you're saying the tornado itself wasn't.
It's just so like you almost have, like I'm describing, like this block of a cloud is just like touching the ground, and the storm is so low where it's like you have to be like, no, dude, that's the tornado.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not what they look like. They look like funnels. And I'm like, yeah, I know that, but like this one was just so big. Like it just like there was no cone to it. It's just like,
yeah, it wasn't no Wizard of Oz.
It was not that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I went back to San Diego and kind of was just doing some random film stuff. Invisible Children was working on this. They were going to do this thing at called the Fourth Estate, which is man, I'm gonna screw up describing this, but it was just kind of like this thing that we did at USD. We did one at USD, and then we did one at UCLA, and they're going to have all these, people come in, celebrities and experts, talk about almost kind of like a TED Talk, but like more specific about like what Invisible Children does, kind of like that genre of people. And what they wanted to do was in between these speakers, like make cool content to kind of show in between and update some videos and stuff like that. So like, hey man, you want to come back here and pump some stuff out for us? We want to finish something that you started that never got done. And I was happy about it because I still think it's not out for people to watch, but it was one of the things that I'm most proud of, and probably the funnest project that I ever worked on there. And just long story short about that, it was a 2-piece video, and we did these action kits. I think, and I don't know, I can't forget. I don't think it was for Coney. It might have been the video before, but you get this, like, if you bought the movie or whatever, paid $25, you get this kit and had like t-shirts and stickers and all this stuff. But what people didn't know is that, and this is the super fans finding out about it, is that there was a secret mystery about the box. And if you scan this QR code or whatever, it would take you to this page, and it would be like, whatever, random words or whatever. But if you could solve that, it would take you to this next thing. And so, black lights, stuff like that, all these weird things. And then whoever got to the end first would get like a free trip to come to this fourth estate. So we made a video about that. And then when these people came to the fourth estate, what they didn't know is that they were actually going to win a trip to Uganda. And so we played the video of all these people, because we interviewed a lot of people that like made it pretty far in the game, what they got stuck on, all this stuff. And, the 2 people that are there are in it and they're watching it. And what they didn't know is at the end, they win a trip to Uganda, they come up on stage and all this stuff, and I'm filming their reactions, filming this. And so they like lose their mind. And then when I was living out there in Uganda, they came out for their trip. So I filmed, with them for a week, showed them all this stuff. And then what they also didn't know is once they got out there, we had another like scavenger hunt planned for them. And so they like went around the whole country looking for clues and stuff. And so that was kind of the part that never got edited. So I made like the whole thing, like a 40-minute. The first half is the scavenger hunt that everyone was involved with. And the second half was them winning and then going on this trip and then finishing the scavenger hunt. So I went back to Invisible Children, made that movie. While I was there was another guy that was in my same situation that had worked there and come back to help on some of these projects. And he was working where I'm currently working now. And he's like, hey man, we're looking for some video people. If you're interested, throw my name down on the application and you'll probably get it. So I did. And now I've been here for about 7 years doing this. But yeah, I don't know, man. Music is still everything to me. I'll just kind of jumping into the last thing I did and why this was really cool. So I've actually known Alon, Ruben, and Aaron,
yeah,
his brother, for a long time now. Actually, when I was living in LA.
Are they San Diego or are they California based, the 2 brothers?
San Diego. They're, I'm pretty sure, born and raised San Diego. So when I was living in LA, I got to interview Alon, and he was in a band called Lost Prophets back in the day. And I interviewed them and kind of kept that relationship. I did like some random projects because Alon, has a studio at the house. And so I'd go there and record, and kind of got to know Alon pretty well, and Aaron, where they would kind of hit me up all the time. And for super small stuff, Alon is just so talented. He has his own thing, The New Regime. He writes all the music, he sings and all that stuff. So, I mean, he can he can play every instrument, including vocals.
He's like a legit virtuoso.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Like watching that guy, he can literally listen to something and then be like, okay, yeah, I can play it now. Just by hearing it like once, dude. Like some of this stuff for like Angels, he'll hear it, like the stuff that's just like, you know, recorded for like the demo or whatever, and he'll be like, all right, cool, here I go, I'm gonna start playing it. I'm like, dude, you know how long that would take me? And I know how to play music. I don't have an ear like that can just hear something once and then just start playing it, dude.
Yeah, and he's I think officially the youngest person in the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I found that, that was like last week I found out about that. I texted him, I was like, dude, I just saw that you're getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, dude. Like, that's amazing, dude. So that guy, I mean, I think that's why him and Tom have been together for so long now. Tom sees it too. It's crazy.
What did they like give you an avenue into something?
What do you mean?
You were saying you started venturing out. You said you were with something for 7 years, but then I kind of cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
But you were saying something about them.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still here. I work at an agency, doing video stuff. You know, I love it here, full-time job. But music is like my passion. That's just never really been a full-time job. It's just so inconsistent that like it works better as a freelance job for sure. So anyways, anytime that there's something music related, a project, like I almost never turn it down. So what happened was Aaron hit me up. He's like, hey man, we're going to be in the studio recording some new stuff. This was how you found me. And can you come in here and, you know, film along? We're doing drums for 2 days. Can you come in and film some drums? Sure. So I went in there and filmed drums for 2 days. It was really just the two of them. Tom had been in and out, but really just kind of checking in, kind of. And then Tom's manager found out that I was there, and he's like, hey man, like, will you just stay there the whole week? We're going to be doing bass and vocals and guitar and all that stuff. And he's like, I want footage of that stuff. And I'm like, sure. So it turned into a week, and there's still vocals that I'm supposed to be getting that have not happened yet. But it's been really cool, you know, for a lot of reasons. One is just because, you know, I haven't been to a show in 6-7 months now, dude. Like, me and my wife go to shows pretty often, and there's just obviously a drought, and who knows how long this drought's going to be. It's most likely going to be a very long time, I think, before we're shoulder to shoulder again in a venue, which is, you know, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, we just had Will Levy from The Story So Far on. He said the same exact thing you just did.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's also like, you know, why I'm pretty grateful about my current day job, is that it hasn't really been affected too much by the situation, where all my friends that are in music, they're just like, dude, who knows if it could be years before I go back out on tour to like film a band. And it sucks, man. It really does.
And a lot of these musicians too, now they have such good technology just set up in their houses. They're doing their live streams and their videos just straight from their house. But so did you know, you're saying you knew the Rubens before they were even in Angels and Airwaves too?
Yeah.
Working with Angels?
Yeah, so I mean, I did the random interview back when Alon was drumming for Lost Prophets. And again, that was just, I didn't really take anything. I did the interview, not getting phone numbers or anything. And then Aaron hit me up. It was probably 2 years after I did that. I mean, I did that interview probably in 2006. And a couple of years later, I get hit up from Aaron, not really making that connection, just like, hey man, like, Alon's doing this record. I got your number from this person. It's called The New Regime. Can you come and like interview him and make some videos out of that or whatever? Like, all right. And so like, as I'm driving to the house, I'm like, dude, this place I've been here before. Like, and then I walk inside and I'm like, okay, I've definitely been to this house, but I didn't know how I'd ever been there. I'm like, dude, how do I know this? And I don't want to ask, look like an idiot. So I'm like texting my friend that I had done work tour with. I'm like, dude, I'm like sending a picture of the house. I'm like, we've been in this house before. Whose is this? And then he tells me, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Now I can bring it up. So yeah, I did this thing for Alon when he was starting The New Regime. And then since then, it's just kind of been very random and spontaneous projects of video stuff. I mean, Alon is at the time too, he was like learning how to edit. He's just like, I'm figuring this out because I want to learn how to edit. And he's just so good at just everything he does, man. And he doesn't quit until he's a master at it. So even editing, like he edits a lot of his own stuff.
Audio or video?
Video.
Or both, probably.
Probably both. Yeah. I mean, probably both, or at least Aaron's doing it for him. So yeah, on this last one, when I was there, it was just being in the room, like seeing live music, not even, it could have been anybody, but the fact that I was kind of there and music was being played live was like really refreshing. And getting to kind of hear that every day for a week was just really nice to be a part of that. And then, so they did drums, then they did guitar, and then, so they were going to do bass. They're like, hey, can you come in? We're going to do bass. And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Wondering who's going to do it. Cause, I know they had Matt from Taking Back Sunday doing bass on the last record, I believe. And I'm like, I don't think he's here, but maybe Alon's going to play the bass parts for this. I don't know. And I get there and I open the door and Matt's standing right there. And I'm like, oh crap, dude. We used to talk back in the day, like when we were on Warped Tour, we never like got phone numbers or anything like that. But when I saw him, I was like, oh man, he's here. And then he's like, I know you from somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, back in the day. And he's like, yeah, but like what day? And I'm like, well, Warped Tour days. And he's like, oh, that's right, dude. How are you doing? And I'm like, I can't believe this guy remembers me. So yeah, he was there and he played bass. And I mean, man, he's incredible at bass, dude. He's one of those guys too, where you can kind of just hear it and just start playing it. And, Tom was there a lot of that time too. And watching the two of them kind of go over tracks and, describing how this song should go, or really the environment that they would imagine that this song would be played in, was something that I'd never really experienced hearing musicians talk about, as far as like the feel of this song. I want to write this song, or I want this song to sound like it's being played in this type of venue with these types of kids doing this type of dancing. And that's kind of like how they would talk to each other. And I'm like, that is an interesting way to give feedback on a bass riff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was even going to ask you, because from back in the day, the Warped Tour days, I figured Matt Rubano was playing on this record. And I was going to say, you probably knew him as well. And then David Kennedy, was he chilling out there too?
Yeah. So it's weird. I mean, all those guys, I've done stuff with everyone in that band and Angels on like different occasions before even working with Angels.
Like so individually.
Yeah. So, Tom obviously with just all the Macbeth stuff, Alon with just The New Regime and Lost Prophets. And then David
has a coffee shop out there, right?
Yeah, so David has James Coffee out here, which is, pretty rad little spot. I think he's got like 3 shops now here. And so, yeah, I was doing stuff for him because he, was a part of Macbeth. And so I shot some stuff at him. And this was right when he was getting into coffee. So I went to his place. He had this garage. And for the video that I was shooting, it was just kind of him working on his motorcycle and doing all that kind of stuff. We went surfing, and so we filmed some surfing stuff. And I made this little video about him and Macbeth. But off to the side, he had this like coffee roaster, and he's like, I'm starting to make coffee, man. Like, I'm making it here in the garage, and, we'll see what happens to it. And now it's this like pretty big coffee shop here in San Diego. So yeah, he's doing that. And then with Matt, I guess, with Matt, I actually did a video for Taking Back Sunday. It was like a live video. I'm going to try to look it up while I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
For, I think it was Faith, the song Faith, where they already had a video out, and it was just like a whatever video. And then they're like, hey, while you're out at Bamboozle, can you film Taking Back Sunday? We'll give you some studio footage, and we want to just use this as kind of like a promo to release like a song. And so, yeah, I filmed them on set. But actually, now that I'm looking at this video, this was, I think, Matt was not in the band. I think this is the debut of when they switched back to the original lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was actually, Matt. You're right.
So this was 9 years ago, dude.
Well, it's even crazy you hear and you say Bamboozle, because like I was saying earlier, Bamboozle was the festival that everyone would go to, because it was 40 minutes from our house, right outside the city. But that music was huge. I feel like festivals at the time weren't like they are now. EDM festivals rule the world right now, but that scene being there, and when they closed it down, because it was a giant stadium for a while. It was a giant stadium, and then I never went to those, but that was when you had the Taking Back Sundays, that whole genre. But the only Bamboozle we went to is when they opened it in Asbury Park, and Blink was headlining. I'm trying to think. It was actually an amazing lineup, dude. Like, looking back, I'm kind of pissed because, again, I wasn't big into the festivals. I just liked going to a show myself, one-on-one, seeing the band. And now I probably look at it a little bit different, but the day I went to, the first day, was Blink and My Chemical Romance and Foo Fighters.
Oh, wow.
Was the first day. Or no, excuse me. It was Foo Fighters and Blink couldn't make it, so My Chemical Romance stepped in. And Blink was the main reason I wanted to go, because I had saw Blink on the Honda Civic tour. So it was Blink, My Chemical Romance, and it was sick. Tom had just been back in the band, so like I am blessed to say that I witnessed that. They had just put out Neighborhoods, which to me is an incredible record. I don't care what anybody says. For that record to have been made in separate rooms and separate studios is phenomenal. That's something within itself that I'm like, for something to sound so good and well put together by collaborating in that fashion is amazing, and the songs are still top notch. But yeah, they couldn't make it. But I think, dude, like the second day, I just looked up the lineup. So the final lineup, like I was saying, the one day was supposed to be Foo Fighters and Blink. And I'm just going to go through the headliners because there were so many bands. And this was the last year they did it. And but the headliners, day one, Skrillex, Incubus, and Mac Miller. Day two, headliners ended up being Foo Fighters and My Chemical Romance. It was supposed to be Blink. And day three was Bon Jovi, Gaslight Anthem, and Brand New.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. It was pretty sick. And but yeah, they couldn't make it that year, which was a super bummer, but at least I was able to catch them. And but yeah, I will say it was cool because even the photos you've been posting of Angels and Airwaves in the studio, and I saw them in Philly, their past tour. And kind of how you were saying with the woman who was eyeballing you guys down, Dude, I swear on my life, it was one of the craziest things because you ever have those moments when maybe like you run into someone randomly, and I've always had these thoughts where I'm like, every single thing I did today, like perfectly aligned, so I cross paths with this person randomly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we, went to this brewery, had a couple drinks, whatever, ate some food, and we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And we're walking, and I think they were playing the Fillmore. And we walk in, and I forget if it was a guy or girl, walks up to my friend and goes, "Hey, do you guys basically want to stand on the balcony?" Which was like VIP. I don't know. And she's like, "We have a couple extra spots if you want to go up. Like, we're taking up only this many people." And so all five of us, they shift us up top. We're watching the show from the upper balcony, like overseeing everyone. And they just got like, again, catered food, uh, all these like platters, like fruit and candy even. I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? And we ended up watching the show from there just because someone kind of hooked us up. And it was amazing, man. Like it was probably one of my favorite shows. And what do you see in his, let's put it this way, what do you see in his ambition over the years, coming from one of the most successful, originators of the whatever genre you want to call it, pop punk, whatever. But what is it like for you being a part of that project?
It's always the thing that I get excited about the most when I get hit up to do anything with almost with anybody in Angels, dude.
Because the stuff they do, and that's what I love so much, is that, and it's so ambitious. And he had even said in an interview recently, like, I believe I can do anything I put my mind to. And I think he has an understanding of consciousness that's a little bit far from the norm, that people can be very judgmental and stigmatizing about. And the ambition of those projects is coincided with the art. And I think that's what's so great, is because it's not, people, like, I feel like to put someone down when they have that big of an ambition, and they're just like, oh, who the fuck's this guy? Even though
Yeah,
he has a proven thing. But I just think it's so easy. It's so easy for someone to want to say, no, you can't, or what the hell are they doing, and this and that. So yeah, like, you can continue, but it must be crazy to see that and to be a part of it. I'm that kind of goes back to why I'm so happy that you were able to do this and talk and shed this light, not only as a fan of Angels and Airwaves and Tom, but just, the whole point of us trying to do this was so we can hear these experiences where someone like yourself says, you know what, no, I am going to go do this. And that great things can happen and do happen from those. But going back to the art, what is, kind of tell us about that, working with them.
yeah. I mean, I think my perspective of Tom is he's kind of the guy that's everything is impossible until somebody does it type of thing, and Tom's gonna be the one that does it. If this hasn't been done before, if he doesn't seem to care what people think, man. If aliens are real, man. Like, I've always thought that. He's kind of definitely guided me more that direction. Once I realized how into it he was, way back in the day, to, like, I don't know, Enema of the State, when Aliens Exist, the song was out. I'm like, dude, yeah, I didn't think that he was, that into it back then, but, obviously it's his passion. And to see headlines where it's like, former Blink-182 band member, releases this footage of, unidentified flying objects, and the government doesn't, is confirming that they also don't know what it is. And I'm like, see, like, all these people that said he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's crazy. And now it's like, now look, you guys, now all this proof is coming out. And I think people's, thoughts are changing. I think a lot of people still don't want to believe it, but he just has big ideas. Like everything he wants to do is just a big idea, whether it's with music or, you know, with his store, his company. He likes being busy, man, and he you know, is at a point in his life where he can do whatever he wants. You know, if he wants to make an animated movie, he can do that, and he can work with the right kind of people. And being a part of that, you know, I'm very grateful to be a part of that. Whether, you know, it's taking pictures or video. You know, I'm shooting this stuff right now. It's, you know, it's not necessarily going to be, we don't know what it's going to be used for, but just the fact that they want me there, and they, you know, trust me to be in this room and can really not censor themselves too much. I feel like they're very themselves when I'm around them, and you know, it's a lot of butt jokes and a lot of alien commentary, but it's always funny, man. Just, you know, he'll make fun of me, and you know, we'll talk about boners and stuff, which just like blow my mind. That's what we're talking about right now. It's fun to be around, man. And it's just, even the little amount of time that I get to spend with him, or really anyone in that room, for a half day, even if it's a couple hours that I can only, you know, do that day, it really energizes me, and it makes me super grateful that I've met the people that I've met, and that I get to do this and be a part of this, because that's really when I step back and I'm like, this is why I love what I do, is because I get to be in this room and they want me here, and I'm going to try even harder now, because, you know, this is the type of job with jobs like that. It's like, that's the one thing when it comes to like rates for like being paid. It's just one of those things where it's, when I deal with it, it's never really, my rate card kind of just goes out the window, because it's like, well, yeah, I want to do this. And obviously there's going to be somebody else that wants to do this for even cheaper than me. So just get me in there, and then, you know, we'll talk about that stuff later, because that's not important right now. Like, this experience is priceless. And this is the exact thing that I love about my job. So I just want to be a part of it, and the rest kind of just falls into place.
What's so amazing, and where I think he inspires a lot of people, if well, I'll just, more so, I can't speak for anyone else but myself, but the amount of inspiration I pull from him as a person, an artist, just because of, like you said, that attitude of anything is, I believe anything is possible as well, but he's so aware, it seems, of, like, it's almost, he's said it before, where like Pink Floyd, they don't have a Pink Floyd, it's a different style of music, but the aroma and the atmosphere and the overall piece of work of the art of the band is like on the same parallel as like Pink Floyd with like The Wall. And I know they've quoted that before, but the aspiration is immense. But for you in your position to capture that as the videographer, the photographer, whatever it is, that is still one big element to making that vision complete. You know, like it's such an important aspect, whether it's like you had done the promo for their tour, or releasing those photos of them in the studio, even capturing like that vibe, you know. It sounds kind of like a cliche word, vibe, but you know, the photos you've been putting up, it's like, I'm stoked for the record.
Yeah, me too.
I've been, but it's like when you see from your job is to capture that, and it's an amazing thing to see. Like, do you find when you're in that, like, you must be having a lot of fun, but do you look at it like someone like me from the outside might be like, dude, like that is amazing, you know? Like, do you ever feel like that where you're like, holy shit?
Yeah, I mean, this last time I was with them was that exactly. It's just I remember walking in and just hearing the first song, and I'm like, oh, cool, man, this must be their single. And then they play the next song, and I'm like, okay, so they're gonna have two on this record. And then, I'm listening to 8 songs, and I'm like, this is really good. And that's coming from somebody that already likes their stuff, man. This new record, I think, has potential to be their best one based off of like just hearing like the stems of the tracks and stuff like that. I'm like, this is good stuff, man. Matt's killing it on bass. Alon's drums are sick. The vocals are sick. Like the guitars sound good. Like this is going to be an exciting record. And it's just like, who knows when it's going to come out because of what's going on. But it's been exciting. And it's as I'm sitting there like filming and taking pictures and, kind of sweating over like, well, should I take a picture of this or should I film this? Like what should I do? And then just coming home and watching like raw footage of these shots that I got with music in it and these photos that I'm like, oh, this is cool. Photos of Tom pretending to play bass with Matt and stuff like that. It's just been really cool. And even the studio, man, like when I walked in, they got all these, platinum and gold records of all the Blink stuff because, they recorded it in this studio. It just has all this history.
Where's the, if that's an okay thing to answer, where's the studio at?
It's in Claremont, here in San Diego. And, it's just all these studios I've been to, it's just like a huge warehouse with random storefronts, and you just walk into here and there happens to be a couple studios in here. But yeah, seeing some of the photos on the walls and albums on the wall, I'm like, man, this place, a lot of history here, man. And that's just Blink. I mean, there's a ton of bands that have used that place. But yeah, man, it's just I'm so glad that this is where I'm at, and that Tom's team and the Rubens like me and like having me around to shoot stuff. Yeah, I love doing it, man.
And this is kind of just my opinion, and see what you think. I feel, and I'll say like, yeah, I'm biased. When I was 9-10 years old, Blink's Untitled record came out. And that's all I would listen to. That was it. So I have, like I said, a bias, but I feel he's a misunderstood dude. Do you think so?
Yeah, I definitely think that, especially like in the last... Well, I think people just are upset, man. He leaves Blink to do this thing that he's so passionate about and start this company. Everyone's just mad, we want Tom to be in Blink, I'm mad about it. And, who wasn't mad about that? But it's like, look what he's doing, man. Like, imagine being at the same job your whole life, man. Like, that's usually, especially nowadays, like not what anybody does. I mean, maybe our parents did that, but like, it's hard to be around that, man. I mean, I haven't had the same job my whole life. You even if you love what you're doing, it's like, all right, man, you just want to try something different. You want to be around new people and get inspired again. And especially with him, he's been so passionate about this whole time. And I think it's always just kind of been right there in the back, and he's just never had the time. And he's like, all right, man, like I've made all these records. I've done everything that I can with this. Let me do this other thing that I want to do while I can do it. And, I don't think a lot of people are happy with it, because it's not pop punk music. It's him working with, people that have worked at NASA and stuff like that, and it's not what these kids are into. But I'm like, well, I'm into this stuff, dude. I mean, I understand it's not like an album that's going to change my life, but like, dude, like, what are you going to find out? Like, all this stuff that he's been finding out has been like blowing my mind. And I mean, you've been watching it Unidentified. I mean, that so much stuff is coming out now, and it's just, he's doing what he wants to do now, and he's making a lot of progress lately. And, you know, I'm happy for him, and I like seeing him do this, and it's just like, kind of sorry to everyone that, you know, wants him to just write music. He's still in a band, dude, and Angels is a great band, and I think this new record is going to be incredible. So just be patient, I guess, and everyone will get what they want.
Even, you know, their one EP, Chasing Shadows, I mean, I hold preference to that record over still a lot of music, and that's just me. And I think those albums and that material does have ability. Everything does, but it does have the influence to change lives even still. And the platform that it's being done under is just it's your non-typical, you know, we're going to release this at this time and this and that and this and that, and we're going to force a single to come out just so we can do this. And I think that's going to speak for itself once the music's out. You know, I feel like the music will speak for itself, and it's just the preconceived notion that, but it's not being done on my time frame. It's not in Blink. It's not this. It's not that. And I just think it was so funny. So I was listening the other day to Joe Rogan had George Knapp, and I forget his name.
Okay, that guy. Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. He's on there a lot.
You know,
yeah.
Jeremy.
Yep.
Jeremy something. And Joe was like loving it. And I just thought it was so funny that they were saying essentially in a different manner what Tom was trying to say. And they were accrediting him, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon a lot. And they're playing the videos on the fucking screen that has the TTSA watermark on it. And yet, you know, even the most prominent, one of my favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan, still was very off-putting towards Tom, almost like again, it's just, I don't feel there's been the right thing it deserves. And
yeah, I don't really get how that all happened. I mean, he has Tom on there, and Tom, you know, tells the story, and then like Joe Rogan just like the next day, and even having Travis on there was just like all these jabs at Tom, and like he doesn't know what he's talking about and all this stuff. And then since then, he has had so many UFO experts on there, and Joe seems to be very engaged and believing all these people. And I'm like, and like you said, dude, like the footage that they're showing is from his company, and it's like, what is this about, dude? Like, how come you believe all these guys and like have been inviting all these people in here, yet your interview with Tom like seems to not have any credit, when it's like the proof that you're showing right now is from the stuff that he has on his website. It just, I don't know what that's about, man. That's a weird thing that I've seen.
I can also understand the other perspective from, you know, Joe Rogan's side, where it's like, you know, it's like, really, again, the guy who talks about fucking dogs. But that's besides the point. You know, I feel like, are you hearing him, or are you truly listening to what he's trying to explain? But it's just like, again, he knows what he's doing, and one step at a time. Like even the George Knapp one, they're talking about, you know, Hal Puthoff, Chris Mellon, Lou Elizondo, and it's like, oh, you mean every single person that he had told you about that's on his team? And it would just, I don't know, it'd be interesting. And I don't think it seems like he doesn't need people's validation, because it's like, again, the work speaks for itself. And even if it's not on, it doesn't happen when people would like it to, maybe right away. That shit takes time, dude.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the notion of therapy, where it's like you go to therapy for, you know, mental health or whatever, and you go for 3 therapy sessions. You're like, but I don't feel any different. It's like, well, listen, we're dealing with something you may have been dealing with for 20 years, 30 years, 10 years. It's not just going to happen overnight. Something of these caliber of situations, that shit takes
Totally.
time, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and I mean, he lives it. And even with what you do with your career, I mean, have you not seen it where you're like, hey, it took me this much time to do something, just to make some moves into something, it
Yeah,
takes time. All that shit takes
absolutely.
time. Well, I'll tell you what, since there's been a lot we've talked about, and seriously, man, thank you. But what's kind of like what's on your plate moving forward? You said starting off you're going on
Yeah.
vacation and whatnot, and the one thing I do want to ask, get your perspective on. So like, how important is it? Now it sounds like you have a family. Like, how important has it been for you to have like a supportive family? Like, is your wife very supportive of what you do and all your endeavors and this and that? Like, what do you have going on in your life right now moving
Yeah.
forward?
Well, this is the first time I've ever done a podcast or really ever even talked this long about myself. It's strange in a good way. I don't know. I think that's has to do with also me just kind of being behind the camera. I kind of just like being behind the camera and filming things happening and documenting things. I just don't like being in front of the camera, so I can kind of hide behind it. I think my wife, she doesn't brag all the time, but she definitely is like, tell me you did this or tell me like who you know. Like I'm like, okay, I don't like when people do that, but yeah. So here's the story, you guys, and I like telling stories. I just don't like interrupting to be like, guess who I know, or I've done this before. I don't love people that are like that, so I tend to not be that kind of person. But I do like talking about it every once in a while. My wife and I are extremely similar people. We have, emo music is what we love, and I mean that's why we work so well together.
Who's her favorite band out of that whole like genre that she have?
Oh
Like one in
man,
particular?
um, she's gonna listen to this and be like, "Why would you say that band?"
Well, don't put yourself in trouble. I'll tell you that
No,
much.
a pretty good guess would be anything Andrew McMahon is in, whether it's Jack's Mannequin or something corporate, or just Andrew McMahon solo. I think that is a safe bet on her favorite. I mean, she likes Cartel and all those bands like that.
What about you?
I mean, any of those bands like the 2005 lineup Warped Tour is my jam.
That's fair.
Anything like that. I mean, my emo playlist is literally just Warped Tour bands. Taking Back Sunday, possibly debatably the top number one when it comes to that size of bands. I'm not really putting Blink in there because they're all-time favorite, but when you are getting down to the lesser known bands, Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, Under Oath is just so freaking good, dude. Yeah, Warped Tour bands. That's what I like listening to, and specifically those years. I haven't really been up to date on anything that's probably come out in the last 5 to 8 years, as far as like new bands like that. So I'm kind of just more of those like that old guy standing in the back corner. It's like, yep, this is the 20-year anniversary of this album. Like, I'm going to the show, So that's it. I mean, Taking Back Sunday just did a reunion tour, and that was a crazy show too, because what they did was they're like, I think they played for 2 nights in San Diego, and they're like, we're either going to play these 2 records or these 2 records, and we're just going to flip a coin when we walk out on stage, and whatever it lands on, those are the 2 albums we're playing. And so it happened to be their very first 2 albums, which I wouldn't have been mad either way, but they literally just played from the first song to the very last song on the second record, like just all the way through. And it's just like, damn, this is so cool. Hearing all those old songs. But yeah, I don't have a lot going on, man. Just trying to be safe right now and all that. We're having a kid in December, so just being
Congrats,
extra,
man.
thank you, just being extra safe about the whole thing, and trying to stay sane, which has been hard to do because we're not really hanging out with a lot of people. So again, getting out of the house and going into the studio was a big deal for a lot of different reasons. Just getting out of the house being one of them.
Is this going to be your guy's first child?
First child.
Congrats, dude. Are you excited?
Yeah. I'm very excited. I've been wanting to be a dad for, the day that I met this girl. And
did you meet her on tour?
No, I didn't. She actually works here in the office with me. So we met at work, which isn't always the best thing to do, but it works out for some people. And it's awesome. I love working with her. She's actually working at home right now. I'm the only one that's even in the office. So that's strange, but yeah, she works from home, and that's it, man. Just kind of counting down the days, and there's not really any shows to look forward to or anything like that. So time's kind of moving pretty slow. But yeah, just kind of one day at a time right now, hoping it'll change sooner than later.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, man. It's a pretty wild thing. I had said this on the Will Levy podcast, but I'll tell this story to you because you'll probably dig it. Which, by the way, I would definitely check that out when it's out. Will and the story. So the story so far is from Walnut Creek, which is out towards, I guess, Oakland. To me, my opinion on the story so far is they are the ultimate. They are the again, they're not like on that caliber of where they were, like how Blink had that insane success. But to me, they are the most genuine, real, I'm air quoting right now, but pop punk band. To me, they are the best band since Blink in that type of realm. And Will is a fucking awesome dude, and their music is incredible. And they've done Warped Tour, I think, recently, but I was telling him, so I was living in Nashville. I lived in Nashville for a year, like I was kind of saying earlier. And I'm working this job where I was contracted to be in Home Depot. And dude, I swear on my life, I'm sitting there moving a couple things up front, and I look down the aisle and I kind of like do a quick double take, And I'm like, my God, that guy looks like Jesse Lacey, and from Brand New. And I look and I'm like, there's no way that's not him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in that point of like my mind where I'm like, do I say something? Like a 100 thoughts a minute. I'm like, do I say something? What do I even say? And so anyway, he walks away and leaves, and I was like, damn, that was definitely him. I should have said something. And then I see he walks back in, and he's with his kid. And so I'm just like, fuck it. So I walked up to him, and I literally was like, excuse me, sir. Like, I'm extremely sorry to bother you. But I was like, is your name Jesse by any chance? And he's like, yeah. Like, is your last name Lacey by any chance? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he had just moved into Nashville area, he was saying, but dude, super chill guy. And it was just crazy, like seeing again, like one of the pioneers, Brand New. I mean, they were fucking huge,
Seeing people, so I've seen Tom actually a couple times just like out and about, which have been like super weird. One being, I was at the airport. I was actually going to go to this festival in Michigan to film. Can't remember the name of it. But anyways, I'm walking through the airport with a coworker of mine, and Tom's sitting at one of the gates with his like head down, listening to something. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, you want to go meet Tom really quick? And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, he's sitting right there. Let's go say hi to him. So we went over there, and I like kicked his shoe, and he looks up and he's like, oh, what's up, man? We started talking, and my friend was wearing a hat, and Tom was like kind of jokingly like, oh dude, let's trade hats. Like, your hat's cool. Let's trade hats. And my buddy was just like a deer in the headlights the entire time and didn't really say anything, and didn't exchange hats. And then we walked away, and I'm like, dude, to this day, he still is like, I could be wearing Tom's hat right now. Tom wanted my hat, and I didn't give it to him. And I'm like, you like froze up, man. Like, what the hell happened to you? But yeah, it's weird, dude. Like, running into people like that is just so weird. I don't even really run into my friends randomly, but I've seen Tom several times like that.
And just seeing that they're like humans too, I'm like, Jesse
Yeah.
Lacey goes to Home Depot for thumbtacks too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's weird seeing people in the wild.
For real. But I'll conclude it, man. And once again, thank you so much. And what is your Instagram if people wanted to check out some of the work you do and have it online? Is it just at Kevin Trout? Is it?
You can probably find me that way. My handle is KM Made, so 2 M's, KM Made, or Kevin Trout, probably one of the few that'll pop up. And yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much. And I look forward for people to hearing this.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was nice meeting you.